Hey, how's it going everybody? Welcome back to Aussie Fishkeeping. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about 5 fish keeping myths. So basically for today's video, what I've done is I've gone on the internet, I've looked through all the websites I could, I found 6 of the most common fish keeping myths, and we're going to be talking about those today. So these are sort of mainly aimed at beginners. I think, if you're an experienced aquarist or hobbyist and you've been keeping fish for a long time, you'll sort of know that all these are false. But if you are a beginner and you're just starting out keeping fish and aquariums, then you could definitely fall for some of these myths. Some of them do seem pretty ridiculous, I'm not gonna lie, but I put them on here anyway just because I wanted to clear everything up. So yeah, without any further ado, let's just jump straight into today's video with the first myth on our list. Okay, so as for myth number 1 on our list today, this one is probably the most common myth, and that's that aquarium fish grow to the size of their tank. So this sort of has some truth in it, just because it is sort of true, but it doesn't mean it's healthy for your fish at all. So if you get like a nice young fish, maybe you get a beautiful little Oscar and you want to keep it in a little 20-liter tank like this, the Oscar definitely is not going to grow to its full potential, but that's because it is stunted. So obviously it's not going to be able to fully grow in a 20-liter tank just because it fill this tank up. Your fish is just going to die. It's not going to be able to live in a tank like that. And I don't really know why this is a problem, particularly in Australia where we've got so many different types of nano fish that you could keep in a small aquarium. You definitely don't need to be keeping massive fish in small aquariums. I just don't see the point. There's so many other alternatives out there. But yeah, stunting your fish is super bad. So it actually causes a whole bunch of problems, obviously with their skeleton, with their organs. They're not able to grow properly at a proper rate, so they're sort of just squashed together. So a lot of the time this can happen. It's definitely happened to me before when I'm, raising up fry. So when you've got a lot of fry in a small tank, you can definitely get a few fry that are stunted. Usually most of them grow perfectly fine as long as there is enough room, but every now and then you'll get 1 or 2 that's stunted, and that's pretty common when you are breeding a lot of fish, and it'll definitely happen if you're keeping a fish that grows large in a smaller sized aquarium. So yeah, with that said, the myth is technically correct, but your fish will 100% die. They're not just going to be able to grow to like a smaller version of their adult self. They're just going to grow until they start getting stunted, and then they'll just die, unfortunately. So you definitely want to be doing a little bit of research before you are getting a fish for your aquarium, and make sure that it's not going to outgrow your tank. And if it does outgrow your tank, you want to make sure you've got a bigger tank for it when it needs that. So yeah, with that said, as for myth number 1, it's that aquarium fish grow to the size of their tank. Moving on to myth number 2 on our list. This one again is very common, and I don't know why this one is common. I think it's just a bit of misunderstanding, and that's that cleaner fish don't need to be fed. So when I talk about cleaner fish, I'm mainly talking about things like bristlenose, cories, otocinclus, sucking mouth catfish, Siamese algae eaters, all of those sorts of fish that people buy strictly to clean their aquarium. So in a mature tank, these guys can definitely go for quite a while without food, but you still need to be feeding them. So things like bristlenose and other algae eaters, a majority of their diet will actually be algae and leftover food that's in your aquarium, but you do want to be throwing in an algae wafer every now and then. You also want to be supplementing their diet with things like zucchini, green beans, even throwing in a few bits of frozen food every now and then, so frozen blackworms, frozen bloodworms. Those sorts of things are good just to vary their diet a little bit over time. You don't need to be feeding those every week. That could be, once every fortnight, once every month. But you do want to make sure you are feeding them some sort of food, once every 3 days at the very minimum. Again, like I said, in a more mature tank, they will be able to go for a lot longer just because there's more algae and more biofilm and all this stuff for them to eat. As for things like cories, coolie loaches, all those sorts of little scavenger fish that people buy to clean up extra fish food, they will obviously clean up the extra fish food. So cories are absolutely perfect for that. They'll sort of rummage around the bottom of your aquarium through your substrate, picking up any bits of leftover food. But unless you're severely overfeeding your tank, they're not going to get enough to fill them up and to keep them going. So you want to make sure you're throwing them some sort of frozen food or some sort of sinking catfish pellet or anything like that. And that's just going to supplement their diet. Again, you don't need to feed these guys that every day, just because a lot of the time they will be eating excess food, or like little microorganisms that are just growing in your substrate. But yeah, with that said, you definitely do need to be feeding your cleaner fish in your aquarium. Moving on to myth number 3, this is one that I 100% believed in when I was a beginner, and now I think it's absolutely bogus, and that's that algae is bad for your aquarium. So this really does depend on a bunch of factors. It depends on how you're controlling your algae, how severe the algae is, what sort of aquarium you've got set up, what sort of fish you got in your aquarium, how much maintenance you're doing on your tank, all sorts of factors like that. But for me as a beginner, I started growing this stuff in my aquarium and I found it actually helped out a lot. So algae is really good. Obviously it does feed your fish, so it feeds things like bristlenose, cherry shrimp, all those sorts of fish that actually eat algae. So it's great to grow in your aquarium as a little bit of a food source for some of your aquarium fish. But as you can see behind me here, I've got this endler tank and it's got this massive ball of thread algae in there, and I find it's one of the greatest aquarium plants, I guess, that you can get for your aquarium. It really is a substitute of Java moss. The best thing about it though is that it's completely free, so you can literally grow the stuff in your aquarium for $0, and like I said, it's literally like a Java moss, so it provides a bunch of little hiding spots for all of your fish to go and hide in. It's great for trying to breed things like guppies, any sorts of live bearers really, cherry shrimp, anything like that that likes dense plants in their tank. So again, it really does depend on all those factors I mentioned earlier, but if you are a beginner and you don't want to spend too much money on plants, I definitely recommend trying to grow a little bit of algae in your aquarium. It can be a little bit annoying when you're not able to grow the specific type of algae you want. There's actually so many different types of algae out there. I actually made a video on that and I might leave that linked up the top so you can go watch that. But yeah, long story short, algae isn't really bad for your aquarium that much. So if you're letting it go out of control and just smother everything in your aquarium, it can become a little bit catastrophic. So if you've got a bunch of beautiful aquarium plants in your aquarium and you have your light on for too long, or you got too much nutrients or something like that, and algae just starts to bloom in your aquarium, then obviously it can smother your aquarium plants, which can kill them. Sometimes if you've got really dense thread algae like this, your fish can get tangled in it. It's not usually too bad for them, but sometimes they can just get too tangled and unfortunately die from that. And sometimes it can clog up your filters or your power heads. But for the most part, it's really good at using up excess nutrients. It helps put oxygen in your water, and it does actually help keep your water nice and clear for you. So yeah, with that said, as for myth number 3 on our list, it's that algae is bad for your aquarium. Moving on to the next myth on our list. This one again is another cleaner fish myth, and that's that cleaner fish eat your fish's waste. And by waste, I mean fish poo. So of course cleaner fish will eat your fish's leftover food if you want to consider that waste, but I consider waste as feces, defecation, poo, all that sort of good stuff. I consider that your fish's waste, and I think a lot of people would. So cleaner fish will not eat your fish's poo. I don't know if anybody's surprised by that. I don't think I'd eat. I'm not even going to get into that. Pretty self-explanatory. I mean, nothing's going to really eat your fish's poo. I don't know why anybody would really think that at all. It might like suck it up a little bit and eat a little bit on accident, but it's not going to go around and just picking up all your fish's poo like it's like Christmas. No cleaner fish is going to do that. So yeah, don't get that in your head, I guess. I don't think there's too much more to say on this point. Yeah, cleaner fish don't eat fish poo. Moving on to the final myth on our list. This one's a little bit on the line, I guess, and that's that smaller aquariums are easier to maintain. So logistically speaking here, they're actually not easier to maintain. I think all aquariums are easy to maintain as long as you are putting in, regular maintenance, you're not overcrowding, you're not overfeeding, all that good stuff. You've got plenty of plants, you've got a balanced ecosystem. As long as you've got all that going for you, then all aquariums are easy to maintain. But like I said, technically speaking, smaller aquariums are harder to maintain. And that's just because a small fluctuation in a big aquarium, if you've got that same fluctuation in a smaller aquarium, it's going to be a big fluctuation. So I know that sounds a little bit confusing, but say if you've got, 1 tablespoon of salt and you dump that into a 60-liter aquarium, that's not going to cause as much trouble as dumping 1 teaspoon of salt in a 20-liter aquarium. And that metaphorical tablespoon of salt could be a drop in pH, a drop in temperature, everything like that. In a smaller aquarium, it makes a much larger impact. But like I said, as long as you are sort of looking after your aquarium, making sure you're doing your best you can at controlling everything inside your aquarium, then you shouldn't have too much troubles. And I do think a nano aquarium is a perfect aquarium for a beginner. But I wouldn't say that they're easier to keep than a bigger sized aquarium. So yeah, with that said, as for myth number 5 on our list, it's that smaller aquariums are easier to maintain. So that is actually going to bring us to the end of today's video. I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope this video helps a few of you guys out. If you did enjoy today's video and you haven't done so already, please make sure to go down and subscribe. And while you're down there, smash the like button and comment your thoughts on today's video. I always love going down there and reading them all, and I try to reply back to as many comments as I can. Also, if you haven't done so already, make sure to go check out my website, aussiefishkeeping.com. I've got a few fish up there at the moment. I unboxed a few fish, I think last week, and most of them are still available. They've been breeding for me like crazy. I've got a few videos coming out on them actually. And I've also got some really exciting news coming soon, so stay tuned for a really cool video. But yeah, with that said, thank you all so much for sticking around to the end. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all in that next video.